All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son to Mashiach, who some call Yahushua, Yeshua, Yehoshua. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. Um, Midweek class, y'all. Political climate of Rome. All right, understanding the political climate of Rome when we, during the times of Christ, during the times of Paul, so we can have some understanding of how things were when we're reading the text. Very important that we understand the social and political climate between Jews and Gentiles during the first century. All right, we're going to glean a little from there. We're going to start with a social climate of Rome during the times of Christ. And we go to First Maccabees 8. We're just going to read it on here. First Maccabees, we're going to read down to 17, all right? First Maccabees chapter 8. It says Judas, you understand the Maccabees, first had the issue with Greek. Then, won a few battles there, rededicated the temple. Then we had certain issues with some of the, once this thing split up and the Antiochus and the Epiphanes and all them, we had certain issues with some of them. And then here we're making a treaty with Rome, trying to, settle things down, with these other jokers that we dealing with. Chapter 8, First Maccabees chapter 8, verse 1. Let's get it. All right, Judas had heard of the reputation of the Romans. Okay, Judas heard of the reputation with the Romans. And I know what y'all saying. Matter of fact, let me go here first. All right, and this is why you can't stop at one part of the story. You have to read the whole story. Now, we like to pull this one right here. First Maccabees 1 and 11. It says, in those days there appeared in Israel transgressors of the law who seduced many, saying, let's go and make a covenant with the Gentiles all around us, since we separated from them, many evils have come upon us. The proposal was agreeable. Some from among the people promptly went to the king, and he authorized them to introduce the ordinances of the Gentiles. Thereupon they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the Gentile custom. They disguised their circumcision. How did they do that? They put weights on their foreskins. Anyway, I don't even want to get in there, but y'all, they literally tried to uncircumcise themselves and abandon the holy covenant. They allied themselves with the Gentiles and sold themselves to wrongdoings. All right. But a lot of times we like to go here. You don't make no covenant. Don't make no covenant with them. And then we read a little more, chapter 2, chapter 3. Judas Maccabees out here destroying these Greeks, and we win this battle. We get everything back in order. For chapter 2, he done recircumcised every child that wasn't circumcised during that. When we get to chapter 8, we see him dealing with the Romans. Hold on. What is going on? There we go. We see him dealing with the Romans, and he's trying to make a treaty. All right. He's trying to make a treaty with them. Verse 1, it says, Judas had heard the reputation of the Romans, that they were valiant fighters and acted amiably to all who took their side. They established a friendly alliance with all who applied to them. He was also told of their battles and their brave deeds that they performed against Gauls, conquering them and forcing them to pay tribute. And what they did in Spain to get possession of the silver and gold mines there. By planning and persistence, they subjugated the whole region, although it was very remote from their own. They also subjugated the kings who had come against them from the far corners of the earth until they had crushed them and inflicted on them severe defeat. The rest paid tribute to them every year. Philip and Perseus, king of Macedonians, and others who opposed them in battle, they overwhelmed and subjugated. Antiochus, the great king of Asia, who fought against them with 120 elephants and a cavalry and chariots and a very great army, was defeated by them. They took him alive and obliged him to the kings who succeeded him to pay heavy tribute, to give hostages to Sidon, Lycia, Mysia, Lydia, from among their best provinces. The Romans took these from him and gave them to King Eumenes. When the Greeks planned to come and see these provinces, we see, when the Romans are taking over these certain provinces and then they're handing them over. Hey, okay, well, I just took this from so-and-so. now I'm gonna hand this over. These 4 provinces that we took over, we're going to let you control it. All right, so you control it and just get the tribute. Just get the money from them. Like making vassal states. Write that down. And Israel ultimately became a vassal state of Rome. The Romans discovered, verse 9, when the Greeks planned to come and destroy them, the Romans discovered it and sent against the Greeks a single general who made war on them. Many were wounded and fell, and the Romans took their wives and children captive. They plundered them, took possessions of their land, tore down strongholds, reduced them to slavery even to this day. So the Romans heard the Greeks were finna try to come get them, and they end up defeating the Greeks with just one general, took their women and children, put them into captivity. All right, they put the Greeks into captivity. Even to this day, all the other kingdoms and islands that had ever opposed them, they destroyed and enslaved with their friends. However, and those who relied on them, they maintained friendship. They subjugated kings both near and far, and all who heard of their fame were afraid of them. And this reminds you of, with us coming out of Egypt and how they spoke about how the God of Israel delivered them and destroyed them and did all of these wonderful things for them and all these great battles. When they went up to Jericho and Rahab up there said, hey, man, we'd heard about all that stuff y'all done did. No. We already know what's about to go down. And we see Judas, an Israelite, giving this report of the Romans and what he's heard. And he's trying to sell it to Israel like, hey, man, let's make a treaty with these folks, man. They did this to them. They did that to them. And then those who were their friends, man, they kept their word with them. They enslaved the rest of these folks. Anyway, verse 13, it says, those whom they wish to help and to make kings, they make kings. And those whom they wish they dispose, and they were greatly exalted. And those whom they wish they dispose, and they were greatly exalted. Yet with all of this, none of them put on a diadem and wore purple as a display of grandeur. But they made for themselves a senate chamber. And every day 320 men took counsel, deliberating on all that concerned the people and the well-being. Now he's look how they run their government. They ain't just got no one single king to put on no diadem and put on no purple robe. Again, it's one of those things we want to be like we want a king like the Gentiles. We don't want our Lord being our king. We don't want our God being our king. Nah, we want a man king like the other Gentiles. And this is him saying, well, listen, they got a council. They got a senate. We want that too. And then we end up having our own senate called the Sanhedrin. All right, it had the Sanhedrin, which was a council of elders and leadership for the Jews during the first century. We copied that. All right, we copied that, and the Sanhedrin. I want to say the Sanhedrin was in in Rome somewhere or in Macedonia somewhere. But I'm not sure on that, but I want to say that what I'm thinking, but I have to look it up. All right, write that down, Sanhedrin, and look that up. What is a Sanhedrin? What is the Jewish Sanhedrin? But you hear the Senate chamber, 320 men took counsel, deliberating on all the concerns of the people and their well-being. It wasn't just one dude. They had a council of men to discuss the issues of the people. And again, we have that today. You know, you got a council of the Senate, so forth. All right, these things are still there. They entrust their government to one man every year to rule over their entire land, and they all obey that one, and there is no envy or jealousy among them. And then, they have a Caesar. They got a council, and then they got a Caesar. And then y'all know how the Senate end up doing some of those Caesars, and you know how the council can do some of these presidents. The president has some power, but some of these bills got to get passed through the Senate or something like that. Y'all can correct me on that if I'm wrong. All right, and they entrust their government to one man every year. They rule the entire land. There's no jealousy, and that's cap. There's no jealousy. He juicing it because he's trying to sell the idea of the treaty. Treaty with the Romans. So Judas chose Eupolemus, son of John, son of Achos, son, and Jason, son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome to establish the friendship and alliance with them. He sent them down to establish this friendship, end up making this bronze or gold tablets and all of this so forth. Y'all keep reading. But we just want to show again the social climate. All right. Israel making this treaty with Rome. And then how they viewed Rome. All right, how the writer sees Rome, how Judas Maccabees is viewing Rome and selling the idea of an alliance with them, and how beneficial it will be for Israel. All right, let's go back. All right, Paul and Silas jailed, and we're gonna go to Acts 16 for that. What we're gonna read here is 11 through 40. Verses 11 through 40. All right. Therefore, losing from Taras, we came with a straight course to Samosaya. I'm brutalizing these names. Y'all bear with me. And the next day to Neapolis, and from thence to Philippi, which is the chief city of that part of Macedonia and the colony. And we were in that city abiding certain days. And on the Sabbath day, we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made. And we sat down and spake unto a woman who resorted thither. A certain man. Okay, let me keep reading. And what was that? Verse 14. And a certain man named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, which worship God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things that which were spoken of Paul. And when she was baptized and heard in her household, she besought us, saying, if ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house, abide there. And she constrained us. And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, these men are the servants of the Most High God, which show us the way of salvation. Now again, they talked to Lydia, a seller of purple. You know, the Lord opened her heart. She was able to and again, they in Gentile areas now. All right. They in Macedonia. They done went to this city, Samothracia, and went into outside the city a little bit to this river where people go and pray. You know, they probably praying to all kinds of different gods at this river. And you know, even these jokers, let me stop. Even these people with the Ephiism, they like to send things down the river, send oblations down the river for their ancestors. All right, for these deities. But they were probably doing the same thing out there in Rome and all the different deities that they had up there. And they, you know, they took Paul and them in, and then came the lady with a lady who did divinations, a soothsayer. And she already knew. She knew exactly, and this is how I'm saying the left hand side knows who the men of God are. You know, did nobody have to tell her that, you know, they already knew, like, hey, you know, just like when he went to that Legion, you know, they knew. Like, wait a minute, man, you here a little early, man. What's going on? You ain't supposed to be here yet. They already know the plan. They already know how this thing play out. But she knew, and she proclaimed, that soothsayer. Verse 17, and the same followed Paul and us and cried, saying, these men are servants of the Most High God, which show us unto the way of salvation. And this did she many days. But Paul, being grieved, turned and said to the Spirit, not to her, to the Spirit, I command thee in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her. And he came out of her the same hour, and he came out the same hour. And when her masters saw that the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas and drew them into the marketplace unto the rulers. And this is why are we reading this? Again, talking about the political climate. Paul, and let's say this is Luke, they and whoever else is following them, you know, these are Jews. Well, we know Paul and Luke, you know, but they are in Gentile territory. They've, you know, they have this person has this woman, this soothsayer, pretty much as a servant, as a slave. All right. And she brings them money by fortune telling and telling the future and so forth. And Paul just took that power away from her by taking that spirit out of her. And so now they upset. And how do they handle this? Okay, how do they handle it? That's what we're dealing with. How do they handle, you know, a Jew done took my slave, took the power away from a slave, you know, done caused harm to, let's say, a Roman citizen. We can only speculate. And what he does, verse 20, and brought them to the magistrate, brought them to the governing offices. All right, saying, these men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city. Okay, they're not from here. These jokers, being Jews, they troubling us. Again, we talking about that treaty that was made, and we'll talk a little more about that. Watch this. And teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither observe, being Romans. All right, they're doing certain things, teaching certain things that's not lawful for us to be teaching, with us being Romans. All right, telling you, they're listening to Paul teaching to these folks. And he said, listen, man, what he doing is illegal. It's unlawful. You know, he can't be teaching Romans this. We can't be listening to that. Verse 22. And the multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrates rent off their clothes and commanded to beat them. All right, rent off their clothes, took off Paul and them clothes, and was to give them lashes. Verse 23, and when they had laid many stripes upon them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely. Okay, so they took a beating for what they were doing. And, again, just showing the political climate, how these things work. Okay. Verse 24, who having received such a charge, thrust them into the inner prison and made his feet fast in the stocks. And at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang, and this is who it was, Paul and Silas, prayed and sang praises unto the Lord. He sang them, didn't rap them. All right. And the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bands were loosed. And the keeper of the prison, awakened out of his sleep and seeing the prison doors open, he drew out his sword and would have killed himself, supposing that the prisoners had been fled. All right, so he hear this thing happen, and then all these prisoners, they done got their shackles, done got them free. And after this earthquake, and he like, man, listen, these folk gonna torture me if they find out I done let these prisoners go. And I done left my guard down, and these jokers done got up out of here. Verse 28, but Paul cried with a loud voice, saying, do thyself no harm, for we are all here. Paul could have let him kill himself. You done gave me lashes. You done threw me in the inner prison, threw me in the darkest area, the dungeon part. He didn't hold that against him. Said, man, don't kill yourself, man. We still here. Then he called for a light and sprang in and came trembling and fell down before Paul and Silas and brought them out and said, sirs, what must I do to be saved? All right. He seen what happened. He seen the demeanor. He seen, the brothers were still there. Didn't want me to kill myself. And I understand what these people were out here teaching and how they done took these lashings. And they still walking uprightly. They still don't want to kill me. What must I do to be saved? And again, a lot of times when what I got to do to be saved? We always go to Matthew 19. But it said in other places also, there are other places you can glean what must I do to be saved from. And they said, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved, and thy house. And they spake unto him the word of the Lord, and to all that were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their stripes. All right, the same one that watched them get lashed and threw them into prison. Now he washing their stripes. And was baptized, he and all his straightway. And when he had brought them into his house, he set meat before them and rejoiced, believing in God with all his house. Same ones throw them into prison, now feeding them. Verse 35, and when it was day, the magistrate sent sergeants, saying, let those men go. And the keeper of the prison told his saying to Paul, the magistrates have sent to let you go. Now depart. Now therefore depart and go in peace. But Paul said unto them, they have beaten us openly uncondemned, being Romans, and have cast us into prison. And now do they thrust us out privily? You did that openly. You humiliated us, gave us stripes, and we ain't even get condemned. We ain't even get our then we ain't even get our trial. We ain't even get our due diligence with our trial in the date and all of that. You ain't give us none of that. You ain't give us our justice. And you did that openly, not privately. You want to sneak us out the back door and let us go. Nah. He said, nay, verily. He says, but let them come themselves to fetch us out. And the sergeants told these words unto the magistrates, and they feared when they heard that they were Romans. All right. And so now you see the magistrates realize, oh man, we might be in trouble. And Paul is throwing that card out there again, understanding the political climate. No. We Romans, partner. What you did was very unjust. It don't matter that I'm an Israelite. I do have Roman citizenship. And you can't do me like that, sir. No. We might have the higher court we got to take this thing to. But they feared that once Paul said, hey man, we Romans. What are you doing? No. Verse 39, and they came and besought them and brought them out and desired them to depart out of the city. And they went out of the prison and entered into the house of Lydia. And when they had seen the brethren, they comforted them and departed. So they did end up coming and say, hey man, we gonna need y'all to get up out of here, man. We sorry for what we did, but man, we gonna need you to get up out of it. Can you just get up out of our city? Don't cause too much more trouble. All right. Acts 17, we gonna read 1 through 13. Again, Acts is kind of in chronological order. You can read straight through like a novel. Acts 17. What's going on here? All right, Paul at Thessalonica. All right, verse 1, it says, now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, y'all gotta bear with me, and they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews. Why is there a synagogue in Thessalonica? Why are there synagogues in all of these Gentiles? Because Jews stayed there. Again, we made the treaty. That treaty that was like 160, 150 BC. And so, you see how we already was reverencing all the things and how the Romans had certain things set up. We were moving into those areas. We moved into those areas. Why? Because they got the great structures and they have all of these nice buildings, and they got all the temple deities and little, some of those deities you did little orgies, all kind of little, sexual perversions that they were doing with that stuff. And it was where it was lit. It was lit. They had the best housing. They had the best of the best. You wanted something better. You wanted your child to get a better educated, maybe one day sit in that Senate and have a good life and have servants and stuff. Send them to Rome. Educate them in Rome. Even if you look into, that teacher, Gamaliel, Paul's, hey, I was a teacher of Gamaliel. Was that in Israel? I wasn't in Israel. And before that, the priest's lips were to keep knowledge. The priests were our teachers. Like the synagogue, going to a synagogue is not Torah. All right, synagogues are not Torah. These are customs that came after the Babylonian captivity. And some of us stayed in Babylon and we built a synagogue. Some of us stayed in Persia and we built a synagogue. This is why you see Acts 2, we coming from all four corners of the earth for these feast days 3 times a year. But on the Sabbath, it was our custom. It was a custom. It wasn't a law. It was a custom that we go to the synagogue. But when Christ went to the temple, he had all kinds of questions and he been going back and forth with jokers, but we did have a custom too where we're diving into the text and doing certain things on the Sabbath that we do today. On the Sabbath day, we try to go over a lesson, listen to a lesson, have a Torah portion, etc. But this wasn't Torah. You're not going to find this in Torah. This is something we did, being dispersed. This was an idea. Some scholars say the Pharisees put this together, saying they wanted the Torah taught all over the earth. But this is why you have these synagogues all over the place. All right. Paul ain't establishing these synagogues. They already there. And he's going there. All right. And people are being educated there. He's going there to discuss the gospel of Christ. Verse 2, and Paul in his manner, as his manner was, meaning as his custom was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them out of the scriptures. 3 Sabbaths in a row. He went there and reasoned with them out of the scriptures, opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Jesus whom I preached unto you is Christ. He's going into the synagogues, giving them this information. And some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas. They sided with them. They believed them. They joined them. And of the devout Greeks, a great multitude. Okay, some of them, who? The Jews. Now you have, and of the devout Greeks, devout Gentiles, other nations, a great multitude, and of the chief women, prominent women in the Roman society, prominent women of the Greeks, also not a few, but many. But the Jews, which believed not, moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, people from the trenches. All right, jokers with nothing to lose. Some of these little gangsters out here, some of the little troublemakers, and gathered a company and set all the city on an uproar and assaulted the house of Jason. Okay, Jason has a house in Thessalonica. He lives there. Now, whether Jason is a Jew or we don't know, but we know this individual has a house in Thessalonica that the Jews who believe not think that he's hiding Paul and Silas there. This is where they meet at. This is where they meet, and then they come into the center. We know where you at. And so now they done got some of these jokers from the trenches, and they done surrounded Jason's house. And when they found them not, they drew Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers of the city, crying, these that have turned the world upside down are come thither also. All right. So then again, they surrounded the house. They snatched Jason and the other believers out of the house and brought them to the leadership in that city. And says, listen, man, these folks got a reputation. They going all around the world, causing disputes and arguments, turning the world upside down. Everybody going crazy, causing all kinds of havoc with this gospel that they preaching. They done come here now. Now they here. These are the same jokers, man. Verse 7, it says, whom Jason have received, and these, watch this, watch how they try to throw it at them now. And these are Jews who are talking to some Greeks, talking to some Romans, talking to some Gentiles, trying to get these other Jews in trouble. But they have to go to the Gentiles to do this. Why? Because they're in Gentile area. All right. They're a vassal state. Even if they're in Israel, they're a vassal state. It's still certain ways they gotta move. Under Romans hand. All right. Verse 7 says, whom Jason had received. Jason brought these folks in, Paul and Silas. Man, these jokers going all around the world causing havoc. And these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, one Jesus. So this is what they're doing. They're saying, hey, man, these folks are wrong because they up here talking about Jesus is the king. They talking against Caesar. They can't be doing that. They ain't saying, hey, man, you know, they up here breaking Torah. They ain't supposed to be doing this on the Sabbath. And they talking against Torah. Torah say, you know, David's supposed to come back. And, you know, where's Elijah? They saying Jesus is a false prophet. He's not in the Torah. No, they saying he's speaking against Caesar. We need him killed. Y'all should want him killed. Because they speaking treason. They, you know, that's death. And that's how bad Jews wanted Paul and Silas. And some people have that same, you know, that's the thing of the flesh. A lot of Israelites have that same malice against Paul today. They'll do the same thing. You see, brothers have that same spirit, do the same thing. That's them chasing Paul around. Paul and Silas around. And when I see that, it just makes me more of a believer. Like, yeah, yeah, that's how it played out. Because the flesh don't change. It responds the same way. You put the same food in front of it, you put the same situation in front of it, the flesh gonna respond the same. Verse 8, and they troubled the people and the rulers of the city when they heard these things. Verse 9, and when they had taken security of Jason and of the other, they let them go. And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. Again, now Paul's at Berea. All right, they end up hearing these things that trouble them, but they still let Jason them go. And then, you know, they got Paul. It's like, Paul, man, we got to get up out of here. We got to get up out of here. And why they got to get up out of here? Because of the Jews. And why the Jews got all crowded up? Because Paul is immediately going to these Gentile areas and going into the synagogue where the Jews are. All right. Verse 17, and the brethren immediately sent him away, Paul and Silas, by night into Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. Now he went back into the synagogue of the Jews, even when he went to Berea. We went to Thessalonica. That was a synagogue for the Jews. So that's the whole ideal of, oh man, we didn't know who we are. We was out there. We don't know. No, there's a synagogue there. What do you mean? The synagogues there, they're Pharisees and Sadducees that love to convert, that travel miles and seas and highways to try to make a convert, to make one like themselves. And this is why they building these synagogues everywhere they go, trying to make people convert to this thing. So it kind of hurts that premise of, you know, Gentiles not knowing who they are in these particular areas. He's going to synagogues. And then it's natural Gentiles inside of these synagogues also. Anyway, which can't be inside of the temple. Let's go. Verse 10, and the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind. All right. Readiness of mind. Hold that down. Write that down. All right. When you coming up and you're trying to have a Shabbat, I mean, not a Shabbat, but yeah, you could do a Shabbat service, or you listening to some of these videos, you know, it's a class. You should ready your mind. All right. Don't be, this I'm finna flip through, or you looking for some entertainment. No, you know, this is a class. You know, we finna go through the script. Ready your mind. Prepare your mind. What's that verse, man? Don't sow on. Don't sow on. Follow your hearts. Hold on, y'all. Make ready your hearts. That ain't it. But it's about getting the thorns out of your heart. Remove the thorns from your field or your heart. Hold on. From your fallow ground, something like that. Hold on. I think we getting close. Yeah. I think it's Jeremiah 4:3. I'm just gonna read it. Jeremiah 4:3 and Hosea 10:12 is something like what we're talking about. Yeah. It says, for thus, Jeremiah 4:3, for thus saith the Lord to the men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground and sow not among thorns. All right, circumcise yourselves to the Lord and take away the foreskins of your heart. All right. If you read it in NLT, verse 3, it says, this is what the Lord says to the people of Judah and Jerusalem, plow the hard ground of your hearts. Do not waste your good seed among thorns. It's about readying your mind. Getting your mind ready, getting those thorns up, plowing that thing, plowing that hard ground, getting all of that foolishness out, softening your heart. You don't want a stiff heart coming into this thing and everything you trying to sow that seed and it's just bouncing. No. You got to soften that soil. Soften your mind so it'll be ready to receive the word. It'll be ready to receive the seed. And search the scriptures daily whether those things were so. All right. They didn't just listen to what Paul was saying. Paul going in there saying what? The same thing he was saying in Thessalonica. All right, that it was needed that Christ died and suffered for our sins and rose, and that he is the Christ. Verse 12, therefore many of them believed. Okay, many of who believed? The Jews. All right, went into the synagogue of the Jews. Many of them believed. Also of honorable women were Greeks, and of men. Not a few. Again, same thing we read in Thessalonica. All right. Many of the Jews believed, and many Gentiles believed. Women, the honorable women, the prominent women we seen in Thessalonica in chapter 16, and of the men. All right. Not a few, but many. All right. Verse 13, but when the Jews of Thessalonica had knowledge that the word of God was preached of Paul at Berea, they came thither also and stirred up the people. And then immediately the brethren sent Paul to go, as it were, to see, but Silas and Timotheus abode there still. I think that's all we needed. All right. And so again, we seen the Jews come in again, with the jealousy and the envy, and try to stir the people up and try to get these people kicked out again. But before they can do all of that, they got Paul and Silas up out of there. Acts 18. Acts 18, we just read 1 and 2. Is that what we say here? We're just reading 1 and 2. It says, and after these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth and found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus. Okay, Aquila, a Jew. Found a certain Jew named Aquila. He was born in Pontus. Where's Pontus? All right. Lately come from Italy with his wife Priscilla. Now, why are they coming from Italy? Why is he en route? They done hit Corinth. They coming down from Italy. Why? All right. And there's the note here that says, because Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome. Okay, so now we see why is Claudius saying all Jews depart from Rome? Don't let that get away from us. All right, what have we been reading? Well, we've been reading jokers is causing all kinds of problems where magistrates are written their clothes and getting upset and having to figure out what they're gonna do with these folks, and then they letting these folks rile them up and they making judgments hastily without really, going through a just system and giving these folks their fair trial, and then finding out they're Romans, and it's just too much. What are they doing? So let's just see why we're going to have to go outside of the text to try to see why this was happening. And I can barely see that. I could barely see that. Well, I can barely see that. Let me see if I can zoom. Wait, no. Yeah, I can barely see that. I can see. Well, we gonna manage. We can manage. It says Claudius. All right, we reading the left. So first is Roman Empire 41 to 54 CE. All right, Claudius was partly assisted in his ascension to the throne by diplomacy of Agrippa the First, whom he appointed as king of Judea. All right, we see Agrippa. We see the Agrippas mentioned throughout the text. Restoring the lands ruled by his grandfather, Herod. After Agrippa's death, he reestablished the rule of the procurators. Excuse me. Although in 49 AD or CE, he allotted Agrippa II parts of northern Palestine. He nevertheless continued to receive sympathetically Jewish embassies and granted the Jews, inter alia, the right to appoint high priests, to administer the temple and its funds, and to look after the high priestly vestments. All right, so Agrippa II, he would allow the Jews to insert their own priests and continue to do those priestly things and handle those priestly orders, investments, and so forth, and the money that was going on. All right, on the death of Caligula, rioting broke out between the Jews and Greeks of Alexandria over the question of equal civil rights. Caligula is one who pretty much started he was a problem. He wanted people to worship him and try to put himself in the statue inside of the temple. We weren't really with that, but also, and that's later. But there is a situation in Alexandria, Egypt. Okay. And there were millions of Jews. Again, everybody didn't stay in Israel. All right, they wanted to go where it was popping, where it was lit, where people can make money, where there was commerce and trade. And Rome, being the pretty much over everybody, they set up posts among, some of these trade routes. Alexandria was one of them. A little farther up on the Mediterranean Sea, you coming in, that's a port city, but there were millions of Jews that stayed there. All right. And these Jews are having issues with equal rights, almost like a civil rights situation. And they're trying to report this to Caligula or Claudius. Civil rights, Claudius. Equal civil rights. Claudius quelled the riots and issued 2 edicts. In one, he reaffirmed the rights of Jews of Alexandria to keep their religion and ethnarch. All right. So, and if you know about the history of Alexandria, they were separate. All right. And again, we see the climate. No, we have an equal rights situation. We see Claudius writes an edict to say, hey, they can keep their religious, whatever religious things they doing, the ceremonies and stuff, and they got their synagogue or whatever. They can keep doing that. You can't stop them from doing that. And they ethnarch. while directing both parties to maintain the peace. All right. In another edict issued to the world at large, Claudius reaffirmed the same privilege to the rest of the Jews in the Roman Empire. Okay, he's writing an edict to leave these folks alone throughout the empire. All right, now while we are reading about Claudius again, let's not lose that Aquila and Priscilla are coming down from Italy because Claudius done told all the Romans, told the Jews to get up out of Rome. But we see here he has, historically before this, he was writing edicts to preserve some of the customs and the religious rights of the Jews and the equal rights of the Jews throughout Rome. He also decided in favor of the Jews in their dispute with the Samaritans and banished Commanus Ventidius, Procurator at the time. Influenced by his friendship with the family of Agrippa, he took steps to secure the rights of Jews in other parts of the empire, put down disturbances against them in Alexandria, and had their privileges restored. According to Suetonius, Claudius banished Jews from Rome, but the details are obscure. Disputes between Jews and members of the Christian sect in Rome had caused disturbances, and Claudius apparently either banished certain Jews or prohibited them from assembling, which led to their voluntary departure sometime between 41 and 50 CE. It is generally accepted that the emperor's arm was the preservation of peace and not an act of hostility toward the Jews. And this is from the Jewish Virtual Library.org. Jews in Rome here, asks a scholar, why did Claudius prohibit Jews from meeting in the synagogues 41 CE? It says, we know that the ancient Roman historian Claudius that the Emperor Claudius reigned 41 to 54 CE, ordered the Jews not to hold meetings in Rome around 41 CE. And yet Claudius does not explicitly reveal why. Cassius does not explicitly reveal why. This is in the book Cassius Dio, chapter 60. Does not explicitly reveal why Claudius would prohibit Roman Jews from meeting in synagogues. If we look at Claudius's letter to the Alexandria, we see that he explicitly warns the Jews not to engage in certain activities, which, if carried out, would entice his wrath upon them. For example, he warns them not to agitate for more privileges than they formerly possessed, and not in the future to send out a separate embassy, send out a separate embassy, and not to bring in or admit Jews who come down the river from Egypt or from Syria, or else he will by all means take vengeance on them as tormentors of which is a general plague, or fomenters of a general plague affecting the whole world. It seems plausible then that Claudius' ban on Jewish synagogue meetings was an attempt to restrict Jewish activity in general terms, with the intention of limiting any further religious or political disturbances. Many scholars contend that this ban failed to stifle Jewish activity in the manner envisioned by Claudius, leading them to expel the Jews from Rome later that decade. This appears to be the event referred to in Acts 18:2, which recently come from Italy with Pontus. I'm sorry, I lost my place. 18:2 notes that Paul found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife because Claudius had ordained all Jews to leave Rome. Moreover, Suetonius Another Roman historian wrote, since the Jews constantly made disturbances as the instigation of Chrestus, he expelled them from Rome. Although scholars are not completely agreed or on this point, it is likely that Chrestus' conflict involved disputes about Jesus. And the expulsion of the Jews from Rome was indeed a result of Christian disturbances. The question remains, was the synagogue ban also a result of conflict surrounding Jesus within Jewish circles? All right. And so we kind of get, they don't know for sure, but they kind of bringing this thing to the fact that of these disturbances that they're having, these debates and going back and forth, and end up when it does come down to some smoke, they end up calling the Romans in and calling the officials of the city in to try to have certain people killed, and it just becoming a problem they didn't want to handle, they didn't want to deal with. It's like, man, if y'all can't handle yourself, y'all can't do these things cordially and in orderly, man, we're gonna make y'all stop doing it. Matter of fact, y'all just get on up out. Don't even meet up here. And so he's meeting them coming down from Italy because they want to meet. They want to go into the Senate. They want to be taught. They ain't with that. They ain't with that ban. Paul on house arrest. I think this is the last slide here. Acts 24:18-27. It says, whereupon certain Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a multitude nor with a tumult. All right. Not with the great number of people, and not chaotic. Not with a disturbance. You see him again, bringing out that these disturbances and these tumults and these uproars were a problem. Who ought to have been here before thee, an object, if they had aught against me. All right. Should have been a lot of people here if they had fought against me. Verse 20, or else let these same here say, if they have found any evil doing in me while I stood before the council, except it be for this one voice that I cried standing among them, touching the resurrection of the dead, I am called in question by you this day. And when Felix heard, this is Paul in front of another magistrate, all right, brung up on charges. And when Felix heard these things, having more perfect knowledge of that way, he deferred them and said, when Lysias, the chief captain, shall come down, I will know the uttermost of the matter. And he commanded a centurion to keep Paul and let him have liberty. All right, this was talking about Paul on house arrest. Paul wasn't really just locked up in no prison, he's with a centurion and he has certain liberties. It's not just totally confined. We just holding you until we can figure this thing out. We can put it in front of another magistrate, in front of people that know a little more. All right, we just gonna hold you. And that he should forbid none of his acquaintances to minister or to come to him. And after certain days, when Felix came and his wife Drusilla, which was a Jewish, and after certain days, when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, which was a Jewish, he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith, and the writer's putting that in there for a reason. All right, this man's wife is a Jew. He sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Christ. And as he reasoned of righteousness, temperance, and judgment to come, Felix trembled and answered, go thy way for this time. When I have a convenient season, I will call for thee. He hoped also that the money should have been given him of Paul, that he might loose him. He was also thinking that Paul was going to bond himself out. Somebody was going to bond him out. And he's like, man, just hold out. He was fearing, didn't want to make the wrong decision on this thing. He trembled at, once he seen the righteousness and judgment and temperance of Paul. And he hoped for that bail money so he can let him loose. Wherefore he sent for him that often. sent for him the oftener, and communed with him. But after 2 years, Porcius Festus came into Felix's room, and Felix, willing to show the Jews a pleasure, left Paul bound. Okay, so Drusilla being a Jewish and Felix probably not, and he's wanting to please the Jews. All right, he's wanting to stay in good standing with these Jews because why? The Romans don't like disturbances. So if the Romans elected you to be over, a portion of Judea or a portion or a province that they elected you to be king over or elected you to be a governor over, they just want to get their tribute money. Once you start bringing issues to them, it becomes problematic and they're going to get you up out of there. So you want to try to keep these people happy so that they can pay tribute and everything can go smooth. You want to keep it as smooth. That's why you there. But once you got these issues, now you got these joker balled. Now you got everybody wanting to kill them. But then at the same time, you hearing this testimony, you hearing the gospel of Christ, and you like, I don't know, but you want to please these people because you don't want those disturbances to go on in Rome. I thought that was the last one. This is the last one here, though. Paul appeals to Caesar. All right, he's sitting up here holding me, but hey, I ain't finna let you just keep doing me any kind of way. I'm a Roman citizen, sir. Acts 25, 6-15, it says, and when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea. Okay, Caesarea is not a Jewish city. This is a city that was developed by Herod to appease the Romans. All right, look that city up, Caesarea, biblical times. Look that up. I know a lot of brothers try to say that, what's the brother name in Acts 10? Cornelius is a Israelite, because he's in this city called Caesarea that's in Israel. But again, Romans made it a vassal state. They built this city. This city was built for them, to bring in and out trade. All right, a port city, just like Alexandria. And the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar have I offended anything at all. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, okay, Festus, he been put over this thing. He wanna make the Jews happy. Because if the Jews get unhappy and the Jews start fighting and burning stuff down, then the Romans got to come in, put the Jews back in their place and try to fix this thing back up, and it's going to cost them money. And then they're going to want Festus' head. I got to get you out of here, Festus, because you let this thing get to the point of where we had to come in and bring the military in to have this war, and all these people done died because you couldn't handle this little trial with one person, with Paul. Festus wanted to do the Jews a pleasure. He wanted to do right by the Jews. Answered Paul and said, wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things? Look, I want to go to y'all take this trash to Jerusalem. Take it over there. Why don't y'all go up there? Take it there and y'all deal with it. Deal with it with them. Will thou go up to Jerusalem, there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong. as thou very well knowest. All right, so I'm not finna go with you, and I'm not finna go back down to Jerusalem and, let y'all do me any kind of way so you can feel good and the Jews feel good about you being over them and all of that foolishness. Nah. No, I ain't finna do that. I'm appealing to Caesar. I'm a Roman citizen. We going to the higher courts. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, and thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, hast thou appealed unto Caesar? I just told you I appealed unto Caesar. Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, there is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. All right. And so ultimately, Paul did get his appeal. He did, his appeal did get heard, and they had to ship him out to Caesar. He had to go to Rome. But again, we seeing how these things are operating, seeing Agrippa come in, Felix, Festus, and these people being over these provinces of Israel and how these things were being navigated. Israel just couldn't handle these things, and couldn't just do, especially Paul having that citizenship. They just couldn't do him any kind of way. But that was it, y'all, man. I pray this thing was edifying. Ultimately, we was just trying to again show the social and political climate, especially during Paul's time, and not just Paul's time, but Christ's time also. Understanding that Israel was a vassal state, and making these agreements with Rome, and how people had to navigate these things. We should also put in there, even with Christ, telling, hey man, render unto Caesar what is his. That could be even a play in there, and the tax collectors and such and such. So we'll see y'all on the next one, man. Make sure y'all like, subscribe. If you have any questions, hit the comments. You have any corrections, hit the comments. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Shalom.